Hey, what's up? And welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions and answer them here in video format. Now, before I get into the Q&A, I want to make sure that I let you guys know how to get involved with answering questions on this show. If you subscribe, stay notified, hit that notification bell, and regularly check the community tab, you will see that there are a bunch of prompts up for Q&A. That's where you would go, ask your question, so that you can get your questions on the channel. So if you're wondering, hey, why does this guy get his question asked, but then my question never gets asked, but you're not asking the questions on the community tab under that post, then that's why, right? I have to source these questions from somewhere. It's a little bit, the search features for YouTube's comment search on the back end in the studio is just not that great. So, I see every once in a while a comment where somebody's like, hey, this is a question for Q&A, but it's on like an unrelated video. Make sure if you have a question for Q&A, you keep it until that week's Q&A prompt pops up. And when that does, drop that question there. If it's a great question, I'll give you my best answer. I can't guarantee it'll be a great answer, but it will be a answer. All right. Now that that's out the way, let's go ahead and answer our questions here. And the first question comes from Megan. Megan says this: I figured that we would have seen Jamari Thrash play in the last few games of the regular season, but he was a healthy scratch for all of them. That was pretty interesting to me. I wonder what they saw from Jamari that they didn't like that made them cut ties with him late in the season. Something. I don't know what happened, but in my experience, when something like that goes down with a draft pick, something happened, right? They released him in the middle of the year. Something that felt disciplinary, adjacent happened with him. Don't know what it was. Don't know what it was about, but definitely have watched enough NFL teams operate over the last 5-6 years of my life covering the Browns and other teams. That usually means something disciplined. Something happened. He needed to be disciplined, and that's what they chose to do. And that's a pretty severe disciplinary act, right? Cutting him, making him a healthy scratch. A message felt like it needed to be sended from a coaching staff perspective to Jamari Thrash. Who knows if that message was received by Jamari Thrash? But something happened. Something happened. Absolutely 100% certain. Something happened. Don't know who's at fault, who's more in the wrong, all that stuff. We ain't got none of them details, but something happened. Hey Nice says this: whoa, here's what I would like to do in 2026 is the year we give Shador / whatever QB we get weapons. Shador and the QB we get fight it out in camp, starting position in camp. If he doesn't pan out, we have a top pick and select a QB. If he does good, we keep him. If he's mid, we trade up for a QB, or a good QB falls to us. Who knows? Okay. So this is like the base kind of philosophy that most NFL fans use in these scenarios, right? Not even just Browns fans, but most NFL fans use. Okay, well, let's just give random guy X a chance. And if that guy works out, then cool. If that guy doesn't work out, then we'll stink and we'll get a quarterback, or we could trade up for a quarterback. Everything that I just described, though, in that scenario, like that sounded super easy, right? But keep in mind that every outcome that I just described in that scenario is rare, is an incredibly rare outcome, right? The idea that you just give a guy a chance and he becomes a starting quarterback, not very common that happens, right? Every once in a while it does happen, right? Sam Darnold. I mean, it looked like for a little bit that was going to happen with Daniel Jones, but then it kind of faded out at the end, and didn't he pop this Achilles? But it happened with Sam Darnold, right? Maybe you can argue that Mac Jones is up next. I don't know. I don't care at this point, right? But that outcome is completely very rare. I think we all understand that outcome is rare. Here's what's just as rare as that, though, that people don't really grasp. That you are in that situation, like, again, let's remember what we're describing. The Browns are a team with a top 5 defense, and we're describing adding more weapons, getting better on the offensive line, basically raising the floor of the team to hopefully squeeze more juice out of whatever quarterback is here. And what that's going to result in is a team that's not going to lose enough to be in position to take a quarterback, right? So the idea that like your quarterback, he's not good, but then you stink so much that you can draft one, well, that's not necessarily how that always happens. I mean, that's a pretty rare thing to happen. Like, think about this. The Browns have been a pretty mediocre franchise for 26 years. There have been maybe 3 times in those 26 years that the Browns were bad enough to actually go after a quarterback. Maybe 4, right? If you count the year we went Jeff Garcia instead of Ben Roethlisberger. But there's been 4 seasons out of 26 seasons where the Browns have been bad enough to actually go after a quarterback, and the draft was providing quarterbacks, right? That's the part that people don't calculate. The draft has to provide quarterbacks at the top, and the Browns have to be in position to take one of those quarterbacks. It's happened 4 times in 26 years. It's not necessarily common, right? The 4 times it happened were what, 99 when you took Tim Couch, then in 04 where you missed out on Ben Roethlisberger, and then you got to go back to what, 16 when you passed on Carson Wentz to trade back, and then you got to go all the way back to 2018 when you took Baker Mayfield. So 4 times, maybe 5, but really 4, right? That you've been in a position to take a quarterback while that quarterback has been there. Especially if we're talking about guys that you take in the top 5, right? That does not happen very often. It is not very common. People talk about it like it's just, oh, you'll stink and you'll get a quarterback. That's not how it's happened for the last 26 years. So when people frame it like that, where it's like, oh, well, we'll stink, we'll get a quarterback, or we'll be good, and, we won't need a quarterback. We're talking about 2 things that have less than like a 5% chance of happening. And then your other one that you throw in, oh, well, if we're mid, we'll just trade up for a quarterback. Still incredibly rare that the opportunity presents itself that a quarterback worth a top 5 pick will, 1, be available in that draft, and 2, the team that has that pick is not interested in taking them. So what? 7% this way, 5% that way, right? So we're talking about it as if it's a guarantee one way or the other that if the Browns win, then we got a quarterback. That's a 5% chance in reality. If the Browns lose and they're not that good, the chance that they're going to be bad enough to get a top 5 pick at quarterback with that selection, probably about another 5% there. And then the chance that the Browns are going to be able to trade up to get a quarterback, we'll call that another 5%. The other 85% likely part of that scenario is that you'll win 5 to 8, maybe even 9 games if you're lucky, and you have bad quarterback play and you're picking 15th. That's the most likely scenario. And I don't think people grasp that. And that's why I had such a sense of urgency about wanting to just, you were in striking range for a quarterback if you could just get to that pick, right, where you could take a guy that you're comfortable with in the top 5. You got to take those opportunities when they're in front of you, because I've watched this team for 26 years, and they've had like maybe 4 opportunities to get out of quarterback hell in the draft. You know what I mean? So that's why I can't get on board with that thinking. I think it's hopeful, but we're really hoping for what, 15% likely. And I think I'm being generous with those percentages. It's just not very likely. You know what I mean? When you actually think about the bigger picture and how much room there is for stuff to go wrong when you're trying to plan out how you can draft a quarterback. Owen says Owen 754 says this. Could you rank the following cheap rookies QB options? He said Zach Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, Marcus Mariota, Mitchell Trubisky, and Jameis Winston. Let me tell you something, man. Let me tell you something. If these are the Browns' options, I have no passionate opinion about either. The Browns could literally go on YouTube, put all 5 of these names in a hat, shake it up, and draw it like the fucking lottery. And I wouldn't have a problem with it because I'm not going to get mad that you signed Marcus Mariota instead of Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't care. Like, I don't care if you want to go with Zach Wilson over Jameis Winston. I'm not about to argue with you about this. I don't. What am I ranking? What am I ranking? What am I ranking? Like the 5 best ways to split up a turd? No, no, man. If these are the Browns' options at quarterback, if this is what the Browns can produce at the quarterback position, then it don't matter, man. We're probably playing Shador the whole season, and I'm hoping that works out. Because then we're this close to playing Deshaun Watson, right? Like, if we're talking big about, oh, Mitchell Trubisky is going to come in here and take, I already know how this is going to play out, man. Just play Deshaun. I mean, not even just play Deshaun, just play Shador at that point. All of these names on this list, I want everybody to look at this. All of these names, I would rather play Shador and Dylan Gabriel. Like, 1,000,000% would rather play Shador Dilligan. Why would I care about any of that? You telling me y'all got preferences on this? And look, Owen, I know you just asking the question. I'm not trying to dog you out. But the question you asked me, I cannot answer because I can't muster up enough care to rank Zach Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, and Mitchell Trubisky in 2026. I can't do it. Okay? I can't do it. I can't do it, man. Man, I cannot do it. You are basically asking me what are the 5 best things to pair with a turd. Like, what goes best with it? Broccoli, carrots? Like, I don't care. I'm like, you, nah. Just give me Shador for 17 games. Give me Dylan Gabriel and Shador for 8 and 8. I don't care how you do it. I'd rather do that than Zach Wilson, dog. Nah, man. Nah. Maybe it was like Malik Willis, Anthony Richardson. Like, oh, it's not likely that any of those work out, but I can get hopeful a little bit. But dog, Zach Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, we gonna have to take the sponsor after that one, man. Y'all shout out my sponsor, Sleeper. Hey, have you ever heard of the Sleeper app? Well, here's a fun secret. It's not just for fantasy leagues. It's great for fantasy leagues. I personally have used it for years with my college friends to play fantasy football and to do pick'em leagues, all sorts of fun stuff like that. But the Sleeper app also gives you news. It gives you scores. You can also try to turn your football knowledge into real money. Just download the Sleeper app and pick more or less on your favorite players with more stats than any other daily fantasy app. Just choose 2 or more of your favorite players from pregame or live. Pick more or less from the predicted stats, and you could win up to 100 times your money if your picks win. Use promo code WORSTTAKE and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Again, promo code WORSTTAKE. You'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. Links are in the description. All right, we're back. First question is from Kali, who says this: what are the chances Geno's shaking loose if Mendoza goes number 1? He's completely outplayed Sanders in our matchup, and impressed with his ability to stay healthy despite all the hits too. Also, we could afford another. This got to be a troll, right? This got to be a troll. Like, you think we about to just go and pay Geno Smith $40 million to play quarterback? That's got to be a troll. Yeah, yeah, we're in. I'd rather just play Shador territory here, man. Like, if the option is Geno Smith for $40 million or Shador Sanders for free, give me Shador Sanders. Give me Shador Sanders. Put my wrist up. I'd rather do that. I'd rather do that. I would rather do that than Geno Smith for $40 million. You want to talk about Geno Smith coming in here on a vet minimum? Okay, yeah, sure, why not? Right? You know, but Geno Smith for $40 million? No. You crazy? It's insane. Want me to pay $80 million for quarterback play that's proven it can win only 3 games in the season, potentially? Like, and no disrespect to Geno, I think he got a raw deal in Seattle, but like, is his deal going to get any better in Cleveland? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that deal's going to get any better in Cleveland. We'll see. P Money says this: could you see the Browns attempting to move back from 6 for less return in order to get a first next year? Or do you think there would even be a market for that? No, I don't think there's going to be a market for that. If QB is out of reach this year, I think they should at least consider trying to get a first next year so they have a shot at the QB in 27. Yeah, I mean, they're going to try. I don't think the trade's going to be there, though, you know, if I'm being honest with you. Any team that's going to have a first round pick worth putting in a package for 2027 for a quarterback, probably not looking to get rid of their first round picks right now. Maybe if Jacksonville wants to call you up again, you know, maybe you listen, but probably not, right? You know, Joshua O'Connor says this: with coaching openings, which coaching opening is more attractive in my mind? The Steelers or the Browns? Lots of Cleveland media seems to argue that the opening is better because the Browns is the Browns. I am not sure that Pittsburgh is the better opening. Here's what I'll say. I'm not as low on the Browns opening as some of the Cleveland media is. I think the Browns opening is fine, right? I don't think it's like a objectively terrible, the worst opening if ever, and who's going to take. I don't think that shit's true. I think the Browns can present this job to somebody where it makes a lot of sense and they would want to take it. That being said, yeah, the Pittsburgh's the better job because it comes with more security, right? Ultimately, when you take a job, you want to make sure that you're not going to lose that job. And Pittsburgh has a longer history of not having layoffs at the head coaching position than the Browns. Let's put it in that perspective, right? The Browns are that company that, you know, you just read in the paper 5-6 years ago had like massive layoffs. So you're a little bit uneasy about building your long-term future there in Cleveland. In Pittsburgh, you know, if your plan is to build long-term, then yeah, Pittsburgh hasn't ever done that in franchise history. They don't fire coaches prematurely. Cleveland will fire you prematurely, and literally every other place has a history of doing that. But Cleveland, you know, but Pittsburgh is not one of those places. So I think that does make it unique. That being said, if you're looking for a roster that's ready to win faster, the Browns are a better choice. I think the Browns roster could be better than Pittsburgh's by the end of the offseason. Pittsburgh's old, expensive roster. They're going to be losing some guys. That roster is not going to be in great shape at the end of the offseason. Cleveland's roster is relatively young. They got a lot of draft picks, a lot of money. I think Andrew Berry has put together a pretty good record of drafting players over the last couple of years. So, yeah, I think the Browns roster has a brighter future than Pittsburgh's roster. But, you know, if you want to go somewhere where you think there's job security, Pittsburgh's a better place to go. All right, J Jet Plain says, what are your thoughts on a Marvin Harrison Jr. trade, especially if it would cost a 3rd-round pick plus some 5ths? I would do it. I would do it. The Browns need to take a swing on like a number 1 wide receiver because I don't think Jerry Jeudy can be maintained as a guy you put in that role. I think you need to allow Jerry Jeudy to do what he's good at, which is, you know, be a slot, but somebody who can be explosive with the ball in his hand. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. can provide some of that number 1 wide receiver stuff. And I think if he goes somewhere where that pressure of him being a top pick is no longer there, there's a chance you get a better outcome with him. So yeah, I would be okay with giving up a 3rd. maybe some fifths, a future fifth next year, and a fifth this year for Marvin Harrison Jr. Because I don't think that you're going to find a better swing to get a number one wide receiver in this draft class, period, than Marvin Harrison Jr. Right? Like, I like Carnell Tate. Do I think Carnell Tate has a better chance to be a number one wide receiver than Marvin Harrison right now? No. I don't think that's crazy to think. But yeah, that's where I stand. Yeah, I would trade for Marvin Harrison Jr. I would be pretty excited about that. All right, the next question comes from Cold Takes from the Land, who says this. Hey Q, how would you feel about Marcus Mariota as a potential bridge quarterback for 2026? I believe he's a free agent. I think he could be solid enough as a starter or mentor to help Sanders out, and Sanders starts again in 2026. That's how I feel about it. Like, sure. Like, if that's what our options are, if we can't do anything better than that tier of option, okay, why not? You know what I mean? Like, the last step before we just go to, all right, man, let's just have a pretty terrible quarterback competition and hope something breaks our way, is like, okay, you can't even get Anthony Richardson. You can't even get Malik Willis. You can't get, I don't even think you should go after Kyler Murray, if I'm being honest with you. And I have my reservations about even giving Malik Willis that money. I don't know if that's it, but at least there's hope because you spent money in it, right? Everything else below that, hey man, you might as well just let the young guys play next year, because who are we fooling ourselves, right? Playing Marcus Mariota, like, who are we fooling ourselves at that point? Are we just wasting time? Like, I'm not a big fan of wasting time. If you want to give Malik Willis a shot because you legitimately think Malik Willis can be a franchise quarterback, then do that. If you want to give Anthony Richardson a shot because you legitimately believe that Anthony Richardson can still be a franchise quarterback, sure. I'm willing to sit through it. Hell, I don't like the ideal of trading for Mac Jones. I don't advocate for it. But if the Browns really, really thought that Mac Jones could become a franchise quarterback, and that's why they're giving him the year, sure. But ain't a soul in the world in 2026 think that Marcus Mariota is going to be a franchise quarterback. So you're just putting Marcus in there so you can play Shador later. Just fucking play Shador at that point, right? Like, just play Dylan Gabriel and Shador and call it a day. And we'll see who gets fired at the end of the year. You know what I mean? But yeah, at that point, you're just wasting time. Just give the young guys the reps. What are we giving reps to Marcus Mariota for? What are we doing? What are we giving games to Marcus Mariota? Like, unless you think that that's legitimately best for the development of these two guys on the roster, then maybe you consider it, but it just feels like a giant waste of time, in my opinion, right? Like, we're talking about bottom tier names, man. Like, that made sense for their rookie year. I don't think that makes sense anymore for guys going into their second year. Either they can play or they can't. You know what I mean? Just play them. Just play them. If we got to sign Marcus Mariota to play quarterback next year, that means that those two must be absolute dog shit. You know what I mean? So hopefully that's not the case and we don't have to do that. John Mercant says this: what do you think about trying to get Brandon Ayuk or maybe some trade with Jacksonville for Brian Thomas, since they extended Myers? And we seem to do well in trades with Jacksonville. Yes. Yeah. If the Browns want to go after somebody who has proven that they can be a number one receiver in the NFL, I would go for it, right? Because I don't think there's a ton of number one types in this draft class. Maybe Carnell Tate, but I would be more excited about Brian Thomas Jr. than Carnell Tate. I wouldn't be that excited about Brandon Ayuk, if I'm being honest with you. But, you could take Brandon Ayuk, you can still take Carnell Tate. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I would be for taking a chance on one of those guys, him, Marvin Harrison Jr., Brandon Ayuk. I think that there's a lot that can be done with the wide receiver trade. And I would expect Andrew Berry to do a wide receiver trade because it's kind of like his thing. I'd be surprised if he didn't resort to it this offseason. Andy says this, hey Q, what do you think about the young mind of Grant Udinski and pairing him up with a Dable or a Mike McDaniel at offensive coordinator? Is this even realistic? Let me know your thoughts. If the Browns did this, or if the Browns suggested this to Grant Udinski, my advice to Grant Udinski would be very simple. Run the fuck away from this job. Do not take it if that is something that the Browns have suggested. The reason I would say that to you, Grant Udinski, is it's one thing if the Browns truly believe in you and they're just going to give you the offense and say, hey, we want to pair you with Jim Schwartz who can help you along the way, much like Wade Phillips helped Sean McVay. That's fine. Asking him to be the head coach over a Brian Dable or Mike McDaniel is asking for a insurrection. Right? That is what you're asking for. You're asking for a coup to take place by like week 8. Because that is all the recipe necessary for a coup. Do you remember what happened with Hugh Jackson when we tried to force Todd Haley on him as the offensive coordinator? Like, we took the offense away from Hugh, brought in Todd Haley, and then Todd immediately tried to run a Q. You had to fire them both. Like, doing this to Udinski would be setting them up to have a coup ran on them, to have a insurrection by like week 8. You can't do that. You hire him, you let him take control of the offense. You give him that as his domain. The defense is different, right? He's not a defensive-minded guy, even though he's a former defensive end, which I do like a lot about him. But he's not a defensive guy, so there's a normal separation there that people could get used to. Having an offensive coordinator who he has no connection to at all, who also has way more experience than him and is older than him, just sounds like a recipe for a Todd Haley, Hugh Jackson style collapse by like week 6. That's my thoughts, though. Thank you guys for the questions. It was actually a great week of questions for you guys. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.